This is the Literacy Mindset Podcast, where education leaders discuss identifying and removing phonological barriers with Mindplay's CEO, Jeff Pendleton.
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Literacy Mindset. Really excited about my guest today, Miss Andrea Valadez from the Heartland Charter School in California, and she is the Director of Special Education and Support Services. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. A lot of fun things we can talk about because Heartland is a unique district, and I'm excited to kind of dive into some of those unique qualities. But first, maybe can you just give us a little bit about you and kind of how you got to where you're at today?
Sure. So my background is a school psychologist. So I started my career as a school psychologist, diving into what are the student needs, identifying disabilities, and how to support those needs. And I learned quickly that I'm going to serve more students and help them more by serving the adults that serve students. And so that kind of led me into administration and becoming a director of special education. I started in a small rural district of about 2,000 students, and then went into a really big district as the director of about 20,000 students, and really saw the differences in needs between rural, and then the 20,000 had a lot more than just rural.
Sure.
And creating programming at both places after seeing what the needs were. And then moved into this position. It'll be 6 years tomorrow, in this platform of a independent study homeschool charter where everything is virtual and online, and seeing the needs here and adapting to that. And I think a lot of those needs is surrounding literacy and supporting reading.
Well, good. Well, we're going to get in and talk about that. That's my favorite thing, and that's why we do this show. So, could talk a little bit more about Heartland. So, virtual charter school is kind of how you would think about it, but you also said homeschool in there, and you said online. So, kind of walk us through how many kids do you serve, and what does that look like?
So, Heartland serves about 6,000 students. We are chartered out of Maricopa Unified, which is in Kern County. So we support students that are within a county that touches Kern County. So Tulare County, Kern, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Inyo County, some Ventura County. And so we serve students in all those areas, and it is a school of choice. So the parent makes this choice, applies to be with Heartland. We can take so many. There are no qualifications that you have to be in it, of course, but we do have a number that we have to stick to. And so parents choose to bring their students to this type of schooling. And it is independent study, but it's homeschool. And so a parent, that's part of it, signs up to be what we call a learning coach. And they sign a master agreement saying, we are first best instruction to our students. We'll work with a home support teacher, an HST, that is a credentialed general education teacher that will help us decide on curriculum, decide on, what does our day look like? What works best for my student? What works best for how they learn? Do they learn in a kind of taking the school classroom and putting it in our home, or are we going to do something different and learn in the outdoors or learn in different ways and in different opportunities, while still following a curriculum of some sort? So they have that choice. And then when a student is identified as needing special education services, that is provided virtually. And so we assess in person, just like in any typical brick and mortar, but then we look to what types of services can we provide this student to help them in their identified areas of need, and support those goals. And, specialized academic instruction is virtual, occupational therapy is virtual, speech, counseling, all of it is provided virtually to really great success.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to dive in and talk a little bit about that. So we've got a K-12 charter that's mostly or predominantly online, consumed online, got a parent that signed up to be the coach there alongside a certified teacher that likely does that virtually. Okay. Well, oftentimes we start talking about core curriculums, your general instruction. How do you lay that as the foundation for, sort of a literacy mindset inside of the district? You guys are quite unique in that format. You don't have a core curriculum that gets chosen and sort of adhered to across all the students. Parents have a heavy say in the core ELA instruction and beyond, but in this particular case, ELA. Is that a fair way of describing it?
Yes, that is a fair way of describing it. So
okay, so tell us more about that process. How does that happen? What could it look like, and maybe what does it typically look like?
Yeah. So if you had asked me this last year, I probably would have kind of guessed a little bit because I stay very much in my MTSS and special education lane. But this year, I brought my children to this school and became that learning coach and really got that inside view and knowledge of what it looks like from beginning to end of how we support students on the Heartland side, and then being a parent receiving that support too, which was a very cool and humbling experience.
Sure.
So
left in the classroom.
Yes. So you have a conversation with that HST, that home support teacher of what is it that works for you? What are you looking for? Because we have parents who work full time. I still was doing my job well, educating my 4th and 1st grader. So what works for you? Are you wanting like a lot of freedom and you can bring in different types of ideas and ways of working? Or do you want a structured scope and sequence telling you what to do every single day?
Right.
I love structure. I went with that. and how, give me the tools on how to teach reading, because again, my background is school psychologist. I can identify a disability, but to teach reading was something different. And so there's options. And even though we have parents sometimes who research their own curriculums that are even part when we have hundreds of options, but they say, we want to try this, and we'll look into it and say, this is something that we can provide, or that is appropriate, or it's not. And we give other options. So it really is kind of sky's the limit with the parameters of what legally we can provide as a public school still.
Got it. Okay, excellent. That's a unique ability, and I'm sure it presents unique challenges while also affording some unique advantages as well. When you get into maybe the next side of that, that's intervention, your bread and butter of the framework of MTSS or RTI. What does that look like? Does it look similar to a traditional brick and mortar, just on a computer screen, or how does that happen?
It is similar. So we do a lot of the same things that most brick and mortar should be doing of, universal screenings and, identifying students through assessments. So STAR 360 that we do at the beginning of the school year. We see which students are on watch or in need of urgent intervention, and we start the SST process with them immediately. We do those universal screenings. And again, if we see anything, we get them into the SST process. And over the past 5 years, our MTSS department has just exploded in the best way, because we're identifying students' needs early and getting them the help that they need. And sometimes it just takes, a couple rounds of intervention and they're off and soaring. So we look at that. We put them into, tier 1 with additional supports. And a lot of tier 1 is giving their learning coach, so their parent, strategies, additional intervention guides, supports online. So we've used Lexia for the literacy piece of it, looking to track those students and see how are they gaining phonemic awareness, the blending, all of those pieces, where are they at? And then they will then work with our intervention team, once every however many weeks to see where they're at in a small group setting. And then again, assessment, looking at data. Are they making progress? Are they needing to go on to our next tier? And where they are meeting with our intervention coordinators and they are getting more of that individualized supports. And we do have a structured support system for that, and looking at the types of interventions that they use. And our coordinators are always looking too, like, do we need to tweak it? Do we need to change? Do we need to try something new? Is this working with our population right now? And then of course, from that, we look, is this a good referral for an assessment for special education?
Right. Okay. When you and I were talking in our preparation for this, we talked a little bit about methodologies or approaches. Orton Gillingham came up. Mindplay is an Orton Gillingham based approach to that, and you kind of mentioned the challenges that can come relative to committing to what is thought of sometimes as a program versus an approach. So maybe can you walk us through some of those differences and how do you guys think about them as you roll them out?
Absolutely. So one of the best parts of our platform is that parents are highly engaged in their students' education and learning outcomes. They're a teacher in it with us, so
right.
It's a collaborative process. But with that, sometimes is I want Orton Gillingham, or I want Linda Mood Bell, because that, all my research has told me that is what works best. And, we have an amazing teacher on special assignment who is just a wealth of knowledge of all things literacy. And she's able to come in and really have that conversation and collaboration of, Orton Gillingham is an approach. Linda Mood Bell is an approach. And the approach is, this is how we are helping them learn. And, this is what we're using in it. And Orton Gillingham uses that. Barton uses that. It's all the same approaches. But, what we're doing is we're looking at multisensory education. She's going through to be a trainer of trainers for IMSE, which is the Institute of Multisensory Education. And so really combining, what about Orton Gillingham do you think your student responds best to? When you're doing all your research, what does that tell you? Okay, in this multisensory approach with maybe some of these other curriculums that we're using, or, these, the actual intervention that we're using, it's
right.
that same approach. And so also let's help you understand that approach. So when you're using your identified curriculum that you're using in your general education, everyday homeschooling, we use these approaches too, because we want to have that consistency and fluidity so that students are making the best progress, because it's not disjointed. It's the same type
right.
of approach all the way through. And that's been very helpful, especially for students with IEPs who are getting this support from their SAI teacher every day for 45 minutes a day. But there's more to the school day.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting way of addressing it, and a challenge with parents. But it sounds like you guys have really got that figured out, and the education side of it can be beneficial for the group. What about one thing that we find in our work partnering with districts is that there can be a real challenge sometimes in grades 4 and beyond when students are multiple grade levels behind in reading, but the teacher of record is not all that familiar with how to teach foundational reading skills. Maybe I need phonics, or I need phonemic awareness or phonological awareness. What do you guys do there? Oftentimes, you can bring in an interventionist or other support systems, but that sometimes is aided by a campus or an in-person thing. So how do you guys approach that? And that can oftentimes be a parent who may not know how to teach foundational skills, likely does not in this case.
Right. So we actually have a big push this coming school year, and we've actually already started to implement it with our most needy of students with that exact profile of maybe their 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. They still don't have those foundational skills. We are upping the amount of time that they are getting that, small group to one-to-one intervention with a specialized academic instructor, and implementing these multisensory approaches to reading and learning to read. So in our setting, they what you would normally think of homeschooling, right? They're home
Sure.
and they're learning. We're hoping, right? when they are. But then you have a set time that you get on the computer and you are on Zoom with your specialized academic instructor. And they are really just phenomenal at teaching the foundations of reading and using the tools in Zoom and making it engaging and fun. And spending that time teaching them how to read, the science of reading. And I can say this with personal certainty. So I brought my kids here this year because my daughter was identified as having a learning disability in reading. She has dyslexia. And I was going crazy watching another program try to serve her in a way that just wasn't appropriate and wasn't anywhere near 2024 in terms of understanding the research and the science of reading.
Right.
And so I knew I had created this program starting in 2020 of something that if I needed my own children to be in, if my children needed this, I would be proud to bring them in, that I stand behind what we are creating and what we are offering to families because I would want my children there. And that happened. My daughter needed it and I brought her in and she received the services that any other student would receive. There was no special treatment. I was very clear that I wanted it to be what every student received because I want to see, I want to make sure that when I say I am proud of this. This is what it is. She came into 4th grade at a kindergarten reading level. She's currently at a 3rd grade reading level. She couldn't read at all. And now she can tell you how to read. My 1st grader who's learning to read, sometimes I will ask her to support him in certain things because she understands the science of reading. Yeah, it's really phenomenal to see because she's learned that. She would have that time with her instructor on Zoom. And then with me, we went through the rest of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. And, I think I dreamt big. That I was like, ooh, I love the idea of learning through literacy. That, that's an option of our curriculums. So learning math through literacy, learning social studies through literacy, learning math and social studies through literature. And so it was a lofty goal. But we got there. And even now, we did a whole unit on Helen Keller. Okay. And the way she still comes back and is able to talk about all the pieces, but she had to read through it. And seeing her be able to do that is then what helps us reframe and frame how we support students in their literacy journey. And then also knowing what is it that the learning coaches, the parents are needing to help support that general education curriculum and to come alongside them and support to fill in those foundational gaps so that they can continue on while still building underneath.
Right. No, it's a way to close the gap at some level, right? You have to keep going, but fill those in. Okay. Do you find in your professional development that you have to have that you have to spend a little bit more time on the technology side of things, or are the tools today so user friendly? They're just like, no, they just get on and we focus mostly on instructional strategies.
Yeah, I'm almost certain kids come out of the womb now, knowing how to operate tech. It's amazing to me. Mostly, even some of our most impacted students can navigate their tech really well. And so most of it is just instruction. Once we get going, once we get everything set up, we are able to get going.
And all of your teachers, they're comfortable with the tech as well. They don't have any challenges there. We have our leaders who help support, and even some of my most resistant teachers. They come, they like working from home. This is something new to them. Right. I've often had a lot of teachers come and say, I'm so tired of getting hurt in a classroom. I'm tired of getting hurt. I want to try this. I'm not super tech savvy, but they come in and it really is intuitive, especially Zoom and the tools in there. And then we have some really awesome, way advanced
staff members, and we do professional developments every month that help give a little bit here, there. This way they're not overwhelmed. They can try one new strategy. So even the basics get the job done. The additional things just make it even more engaging and fun.
Okay. I like it.
I have yet to have a staff member say, I can't do this. The tech is too hard. And I haven't had a student either say that. So.
Well, I mean, that's your benchmark right there. That's pretty impressive that you can navigate it with such ease in the world that we live in. I guess there's some good things that came from a worldwide pandemic that showed us some of the stuff that we could do that maybe we didn't know was possible before that. Silver linings
Yes,
is sometimes
absolutely.
I can't imagine there's anything else really good came out of that. What do you run into device problems though, or Wi-Fi? How do you solve the traditional, school problems of device access and internet access?
So our students have enrichment funds, operating funds that they can use. And so they are able to choose laptops from our tech catalog to use those funds for. We have some families who say, I don't want screens as any part of my homeschooling journey. And we understand that. But for services, if they are identified as needing services, this is how we do support those services. And almost all our families have understood that. And once they see it going, they're good with it. But if they don't have access through a laptop and they haven't purchased one through their funds, then we do provide it for them. So we're keeping our tech up to date. We have them, called a loaner laptop program. We have that ready to go and ship out. Our team that does that is just, they're nails when it comes to getting this in and out, shipped in and out. It's quite amazing. And we've had very few families who need help setting anything up. If they do, we do have a tech department that can remote access in. And if it's something even more than that, sometimes one of our AT specialists, even though it's not full AT, but they have that background. And usually many of our staff live in the same areas. They'll go out and make sure everything is set up, especially for those students that are a little bit more involved and takes more collaboration and support.
Right.
Make sure it's all set up appropriately. Wi-Fi, mostly it does. Everyone has it. And we are very fortunate. And I know that is not not every community does. And we do have some families that don't have it. And so then we have hotspots for those families who are requiring it for special education services.
Got it. That's excellent. Love hearing that. Okay. Well, we could, I'm sure, talk about a number of things on this topic and others, but I always like to ask people to kind of think towards the future a little bit and give us their crystal ball version. So you've now been in a rural setting, you've been in a semi-urban or suburban school district larger. Now you're in a fully online district that spans multiple geographies. So therefore you're hitting a lot of different areas. What do you see as something that you think is going to hold true in 10 years from now that you love what's happening or you like it and you want it to keep happening? And maybe what's something that you think needs to change? Let's talk about predicting the future that way, just through the lens of Andrea's view of the world in 10 years.
Oh, goodness. Well, I've seen a lot of changes over 10 years or more in education. Right. And one thing I really have enjoyed, or I like to see, is some of these recent guidelines that have come out in California, at least, of looking at like these dyslexia screeners, the kinder, first, second grade, really honing in on that early literacy first for the early grades and making sure that those foundational skills are there, and really making it not just an intervention concern or a special education concern, but it is a whole school concern. So I really do appreciate seeing that and making sure that there is continued support and effort put towards that, because with reading, you can do everything else. And so, once they hit that third, fourth grade where you're no longer learning to read, but reading to learn, that is the big change, and making sure that our students are ready to be learners, lifelong learners.
Right.
And I even saw it with my own daughter when she couldn't read well and it was such a struggle. She just shied away from doing any of that. And I knew that that would not serve her well in life. And so making sure that, we can at least, not every student's going to love to learn, but at least that we are not making it harder and a frustration. And so getting them early and having that early intervention is so, so important. One thing that I see that I worry about is the technology in some ways, the AI, the predicted text, the quick spell check. I use it. I love spell check and I love Grammarly, but I know I can write on my own if I need to. And I think that's really important for our kids to have those skills, to not just rely on technology. Sometimes I've had some people say, well, your daughter can just use Google Read and Write and predictive text on text and all of these things. And I said, yeah, but I want her to know how to do it too.
Right.
And I see that with my students, and I hear parents say that in IEP meetings as well. That's great that there's a program for it. I want them to have the skill, or at least to get to their full potential in that skill. And that's where I really try to hone in our programs. It's let's maximize that student's potential. Not everybody's going to reach the same, but if we know where they can, let's get them there. Let's not just get them to using this and that's it. So
the view from the online school is be wary of technology. I love it. I love it because there's an emphasis on let's use it to do what can help enhance the human experience, and let's be cautious not to have it degrade the human experience and lose the skill sets that we might have otherwise benefited from. It has been an absolute pleasure for me spending time with you today. Great insight and wisdom, some unique things that are going on out there in California. And I really enjoyed it. I hope we get the chance to do it again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. I've enjoyed our time.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Learn how we help students by identifying and removing phonological barriers at mindplay.com.